We polled thousands of Magic players to see which Commander cards they want banned the most.
I'm Mia, and I like really cold AC.
I'm BZ. I'm allergic to discourse. We're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom. Card Kingdom is a website. If you haven't heard of it, you can buy Magic the Gathering cards, product, accessories on the site. But if you spend $50 or more, wait a minute, free shipping. And if you use the link in the description, hold on a second. Card Kingdom knows that we sent you, and they make all this happen even longer.
If you use the link, we appear on your screen again in a different window, and that's really awesome because it really helps keep the lights on in here. We're also sponsored by Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
If you use the code
Nerds
at checkout, you can save 5% of your entire real money tax dollar order, and you could get custom sleeves. You can get mats, dual mats. They have so many things there. They have cute art sleeves. Go check them out.
Yeah, mats with 2 T's and 1 E. Not playmats.
Yes. I
But Dragon Shield has playmats too.
They do have playmats.
They got mats and mats.
Yeah,
and if your name is Matt, get over there.
Yeah, get on their site. We're also sponsored by Mockfield. Somewhere there's an ad. If you guess and you say you're right, you're a liar, and we know it. Also, we have a Patreon. You should go sub there. Why? Because we will take a look at your stinky decks and make them a little bit better.
I could have said it better myself. I feel like that pretty much covers it. So these are cards that a lot of players have been advocating for bans. I think all of these are pretty recent, actually, in terms of like the outcry for these bans. We are not necessarily advocating for any of these bans. If we agree or disagree with the community's consensus or the people who have answered our poll, we will let you know. We are not going to come in here saying, these cards need to be banned right now. The format's garbage. It's just like, hey, here's a card. Here's a lot of the things. Here's a lot of the cases people are making for why they think it's not healthy or why they think this card should be banned. And then we'll go over at the end. We'll put a little cherry on top and say, hey, I think they have something. I think I have something here, or I think this is being blown out of proportion, or it's just not a card we would advocate for banning.
We just want to have a discourse here, just have a little bit of a discussion, see what people are saying, and see whether we agree or not.
So if we're talking about bans, it's already a controversial topic. Let's go over the most controversial card to be released this entire year. This is Nadu, Winged Wisdom. Maybe you've heard of it. It's 1 blue-green for a 3/4 flyer. Creatures you control have, quote, whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it into your hand. This ability triggers only twice each turn. So if you're not familiar with Nadu, if you haven't played against it yet, because it is still a pretty new card, this applies to all of your creatures, even if you play them after Nadu is out, and each creature can be targeted twice to give you that same flip the top card, draw card-esque ability.
Only twice a turn. What a limit to put on it, right? That's like, thank God you can't go, not infinite, but like, thank God you can't take advantage of this heavily.
We'll get to that. I mean, there is no question, Nadu, extremely powerful Magic card. But players are advocating for it to be banned. I've seen a lot of outcry, Reddit, Twitter, the polls we were doing on YouTube and Discord. Like, people hate this card. People do not like it. And we're going to sort of balance between what the Commander Rules Committee considers for bans and what the community is saying, and just at least give you the reasons why people are so up in arms about this card. One of the main things about it is that it causes a pretty severe resource imbalance. The game states after Nadu tries to win versus before, assuming you stop them, are vastly different, and you are going to find yourself extremely far behind, because what Nadu does is it sort of creates like non-deterministic combos that you can't say, we'll use Shuko as an example. It's a crappy equipment, doesn't do anything. It equips for 0 though, so it triggers Nadu's like, flip the top card ability for free. So now if you have landfall abilities, because lands go into play for free, that starts accruing more tokens, which gives you more activations, and each new creature is 2 more activations. Can you say for sure that you're going to win? Nope, but you have to sort of sit there and go, hey guys, I have 5 fetch lands in play. I could create 5 more insects. Do you want to scoop? And they'll go like, I guess.
It's wild, too, because not only is it twice each turn, if it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. That does not say tapped. You can just use it immediately. So if you flip a very low mana creature, you put it out, you start targeting again, and then you just have these such big loops of just like land, okay, cool, creature, cool, target it again, cool, do it again, and then you're just spitting out your entire deck, basically.
Yeah, other cards you're going to see combined with Nadu, you're going to see anything that can target it for 0 mana. So like Umbral Mantle is spiking right now because it can target Nadu. Who cares what it does? Lightning Greaves, also kind of the same deal. The only thing about Lightning Greaves is if you are a Nadu player, you can't equip the same creature that Greaves is already on because it has Shroud. Not really that relevant because you're going to have more creatures in play. Also, what's the other one? Sylvan Safekeeper. That one is honestly, that one's pretty rough because if Sylvan Safekeeper is in play, Nadu can't die to any targeted removal.
Another card that is spiking right now is Field of the Dead, one of the channel's favorites, because you're getting so many triggers of lands entering the battlefield with Nadu, then you're going to be making so many zombies, which you can target further.
Yeah, look, it was only a matter of time, right, before Field of the Dead started spiking. And if you haven't bought your Field of the Deads now, I can't even feel bad for you because I've been talking about it since 2020 or maybe even earlier. I don't remember when it came out.
I think, yeah, you said it in your review for Core 2020.
Yeah.
I just don't understand how you're not playing this card.
That is a direct quote from me in 2020 about Field of the Dead. So it obviously causes resource imbalances. That's assuming you don't win outright with it. Some people are saying it's also kind of repetitive gameplay. Nadu demands an answer. He demands some kind of removal, or else they're going to start chaining off who knows how many activations. I think 7 is a pretty safe assumption. If they're going to play Nadu, they're not going to just play it and pass. They're going to play it and then have one of their other pieces ready to start spitting out lands, maybe spitting out tokens with it. Because if Nadu comes out and they have Token Maker plus Repeat Targeter, you're actually probably dead. But the thing about the previous thing is it's non-deterministic, so you're like 75% dead.
You know, people were talking about Simic being too much good stuff value prior. They weren't even thinking about Nadu when this came in, and it's just cracked in half. It's so good.
Yeah,
we played against it, and just the value that it brings to the table immediately is unparalleled, I'd say.
Shout out to our friend James, because he built a Nadu deck, and we were like, yeah, we actually really want to play against this to test it out because I've heard so much about it.
It's good.
We didn't end up losing to him, but that was only because if he had Nadu in play, the entire table was using every single ounce of resource they had to answer Nadu every time. And it just was like, I only answered it. I think the only reason we didn't lose is because I had a Teferi Master of Time that could just keep phasing it out. That was like really the only reason. That card was, Nadu was very, very strong. So this brings us to, it's got non-deterministic loops, pretty lengthy turns. It's kind of boring to play against. It's a little repetitive, causes some resource imbalance, and it can be your commander. What do we think about actually banning this card? I have thoughts, but I want you to go first.
I think bans should only be reserved for things that are actively against the spirit of the game. And I don't think this is against the spirit of the game. So I would say it shouldn't be banned as commander or banned in general. However, I do think that you should have a very heavy Rule Zero discussion with your group to talk about whether this is okay, whether you're okay with having these long, lengthy turns, and just overall what your playgroup expects from a game. I think ban is such like a heavy implication and such a strong word, and I think that it should only be reserved for things that, as I mentioned, break that type of format, which is like Lutria's Companion, because that would go in any companion that it can, because that just goes against the, just like that is the restriction that Commander makes you play against. Or like
Caracas, because it bounces legendary creatures. Like, it just doesn't mesh with the format, assuming we want to have fun and express ourselves building decks.
Yeah, and so while I think this is very powerful, I don't think it should be banned, personally.
Yeah, I am a little bit further, I think, in the no ban camp. I think there's no way, if you want Nadu banned, I really think there's no way that's going to happen. Like, I think Commander is less about restricting busted cards, because Commander is an extremely busted format if you want it to be. I think what really needs to happen is Nadu is going to have some growing pains. It's going to settle into the general, tier of commanders that it is. Maybe some people aren't sure of how good it is, or they just want to build it, and maybe they'll take it apart in a week. So you're going to have a lot of people playing 5s against, what would seem like crappy Nadu decks, but it turns out Nadu's actually cracked, and there's really not a bad way to build it. I don't really think there could be a bad Nadu deck. Bare minimum, you're looking at a card that says whenever your stuff gets targeted, you draw a card or better. And you're going to play equipments and stuff.
I mean, Nadu is great. We've seen it in action. We've seen it in multiple formats that it's really good. But it's just like a lot of other commanders, it's a matter of playing keep away, right? It's like, if your commander's on the field, how good is your deck really? And if you have enough removal, you can answer it. And the Nadu deck that's a 9 with Nadu out becomes a 6 maybe.
So I'm very much in the camp of do not ban this card. I think for multiple reasons. Number one, I think they usually wait some time to ban a card, because this could be a flash in the pan thing. People stop playing it as much, and it's actually not that much of a blemish on the format. Or it could just start seeing Nadu starts to be played in those zones that he is, and there's less Rule Zero feel bads because people know how good this card is. I think that's very likely to happen, so that's also why they wait a couple years to ban cards. I think it'll pretty much sort itself out in a couple months. Just stay on your toes against Nadu. Don't say if you're on the fence about wanting to play against the card, just don't do it. Just say, hey, can you pull out a different deck? I don't really think I'm in the right headspace to, lose to this card right now. I think that's totally reasonable. And the other little snippet here people were talking about is, should they bring back Banned as Commander? Because Nadu is completely reasonable, or at least more reasonable, in the 99. I think bringing back Banned as Commander is just not super smooth or easy to digest. I think having like subsets of a ban list is really confusing, because I was like, I'm super on board with the RC Rules Committee removing the Banned as Commander list. I think it's just only confusing.
I think that in general, Banned as Commander, I like the idea, but because we have so many cards to work with, it's already hard enough for new players or even experienced players to keep up with the current ban list. And that's with the fact that there hasn't been a new ban since like 2021 or something.
I think so, yeah.
So I think Golos was the last one. So even with that, it's hard to keep up with that ban list. So I think that having 3 separate ban lists of, like, when people ask, should there be a separate ban list for CEDH and stuff, it's like keeping up with the CEDH ban list versus like the Commander ban list versus the Companion ban list. I think that is just a lot of added kerfluffle, I guess, that isn't really necessary in the long run.
Yes, so that is a no from Mia on would she ban it, no from me on would I ban it, and I can also pretty much bet my YouTube career that it will not be banned in the next 6 months. So you gotta have to figure something out.
Yeah, say for Commander, Commander.
In Commander, yes, because it will be banned somewhere. Someone already typed a comment, and now they're gonna delete it after they finish the video. Okay, next card. You've heard of it before. This is Dockside Extortionist. This was the most voted, not close. It is 1 red for a 1/2. When it enters the battlefield, create X treasure tokens, where X is the number of artifacts and enchantments your opponents control. Very simple ability, but there's no stopping this. There's no stopgaps put. There's nothing. There's no safety. There's no training wheels. It's just, yep, you can blink it. Yep, you can reanimate it. Not once per turn. Not if you cast it. Just kind of, they're not tapped treasures. They're just untapped. You just kind of make a bunch of mana. It's a huge mana advantage. You can win in any number of ways. Making 20 mana is not that hard with this card. And winning with 20 mana is not that hard in Commander.
I mean, it's such a good card. I've played against this and played it so many times. I've stolen it from other people's graveyards. It's always an advantage. This is a incredibly powerful card, and thinking about the fact that it was first printed in a precon is kind of crazy.
Yeah, so how do you feel about Dockside? Like your own personal, what do you feel about Dockside when you see it in a game or not?
I think Dockside is in the camp for me as much as Ristic Study is. It is up to the people playing against it to take responsibility for the fact that if they can, for instance, if you have 10 treasures and someone plays a Dockside against you, usually it is responsible for you to sack the 10 treasures so the Dockside player does not get that. Just like how with Ristic, it is up to you usually to pay the 1 so they don't get the extra advantage. I think that it's easy to get a little bit salty about this card because you can lose to it because your opponents are not playing responsibly. They aren't forced to, and I'm not saying everyone should, but I am saying that it hurts sometimes to lose to a card where you did nothing wrong. It was closer to the other person being like, but I wanted this, but I wanted my mana now for next turn, whatever.
Yeah, that really applies to treasures, but there's not really a way to stop yourself from having like 6 artifacts. Like if you're just playing a deck, you're ramping with artifacts. If you're an enchantment deck, you can't control the fact that you have those in play. Every deck's going to have them. It's not unreasonable for each opponent to have 3. And that already is, you're playing 2 mana and you just get 9 back, but it's not even temporary. They can sit around. So if you want to use them next turn or at instant speed, if it's going to die, you can all do that. We just played a game. And I will say, we don't play with or against Dockside very much anymore. I certainly have had my fair share. I played it in a game. It made 23 treasures, and then I cast Ruinous Ultimatum, Breach the Multiverse, Shieldred, and the One Ring. And I'm just like, oh yeah, Dockside's ridiculous. It's like, it's just such a huge resource imbalance. Just kind of like Nadu, but you get all of it up front. It's not like, oh, just wait till I equip it. It's like, no, I don't even really have to do anything. I just put this card in my deck. It's the best red card in the format. Play it, win.
Dockside is so good. It is a win out of nowhere. And, sometimes it's just bad beats if you're playing artifacts or enchantress decks or something where you are forced to give someone else those treasures because that's just your board state. That's just the archetype that you're playing.
Yeah, it's not optional. Like you can't just not play an enchantment deck because Dockside exists somewhere in the convention that you're playing in. I think it's also pretty difficult to interact with. You really have to counter it or they get the treasures. Like, yeah, you can sacrifice your treasures or your clue maybe, but there's no stopping this. Like a red deck just has to let this resolve.
I mean, it's not even you have to counter it. You'll have to do something else because I've taken it from graveyards to put it back on the battlefield. It's not cast, it's just when it ETBs. Animate Dead will get it back, Reanimate will get it back. So it doesn't even matter if you just counter it, because if you can get it, or anyone can get it back from the graveyard, they can just take it and get the treasure and the same effects.
So there is another interesting wrinkle to this. I might know where we stand on Dockside, but a lot of people were comparing Dockside Extortionist to Primeval Titan. Primeval Titan is a 6-mana 6/6 trample, searches for any 2 lands when it enters or attacks, and it's also banned. It's been banned for a while, and the reasoning that the rules committee has given in the past is that, like, when Primeval Titan hits the field, the whole game sort of warps around it. Who can clone it? Who can get it back? Who can flicker it? Who can get a trigger of it and then sort of snowball them? And I think that's like sort of valid. I could see how that happens. It's certainly in the past. But now people are like, well, what's the difference between that and Dockside? Dockside is way better in terms of like immediate impact. And I guess I'll get your take on that, and then we'll talk about what do we want to do? Do we want to ban Dockside or leave it?
Yeah, I was like, I gave my take first last time. I want to hear your take first. But
well, I just mean on the Primeval Titan thing.
Oh, Primeval Titan, I think, is not as good as a bunch of other things in Commander now. I wouldn't mind if Prime Time was unbanned. I don't think it's as powerful as it used to be, or at least with power creep, I don't think it even stands close to some of the other stuff they're printing nowadays.
This format is pretty good, and Primeval Titan does feel more like a powerful card and not a game-ruining card. I feel like if you want to keep the ban list as low as possible, you could just save it for the game-ruining cards like, World Purge, or, there's an equivalent, Sway of the Stars. That's what's actually banned, Sway of the Stars. But yeah, I think that if you want to go about that same logic, I would ban Dockside. But if you don't want to go on that same logic, then I would unban Primeval Titan, because I think Primeval Titan is pretty clearly worse than Dockside in like many different ways. For example, combos. There's really no way to combo with Primetime, but there's a lot of ways to combo with our boy Dockside. So I actually, even taking Primeval Titan out of the equation, I think I would be very okay with a Dockside ban. But it's not something I'm clamoring for, because it is, again, in like the top tier power. It's more of a powerful, frustrating eye-rolly card than it is a, wow, this really lessened my experience. However, I'm sure it's in a million decks right now, like almost literally. So if people are seeing it all the time and it is making a bunch of treasures, that could lead to like less enjoyment of the game for them. So I think if that is the general consensus, maybe I would say ban it, but at least for me right now, I might be on no ban.
I have like 3 things to say about this. One, this is a Justice for Primetime channel now that you hear it here first. We want Primetime unbanned. Second
Free
off,
our boy.
I feel like this is just kind of like a built-in gatekeep kind of situation, where it's like, if it was as prevalent and printed as Soul Ring, it might have already gotten the ban, but because the cheapest version of Dockside's like $70 or something, people are not seeing it as much as they would see other cards, and so maybe because of that it's not banned. I think that I'm pretty 50-50 about this. I think my gut says no, but that's like a 51-49. I would not be mad if it got banned, but also, and it kind of like it kind of just ruins originality in decks. However, just like Ristic style, I just compare them a lot, because I'm just like, these are big value pieces. These are often the best things on the table, or
staples.
Best things to play. They're staples. They're found in higher power decks. And so, like, if they got banned either way, or they didn't get banned, I could play around them, Next up is a card that I personally like, but everyone else really loves to hate. It's Farewell. 4 white for a sorcery. You could choose one or more or all of the modes. Exile all artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or graveyards. People don't like this. People don't like the fact that they can't get stuff back from graveyards. They don't like exile, mass exile. They don't like the fact that this makes the game way longer, because it's not like the graveyard players can, wipe the board and then Rise of the Dark Realms and get everything as a value piece. They don't like the fact that everything is gone. And it makes people really, really salty. I think overall, board wipes make people salty to begin with, but the fact that this is a big no, like a full reset, is what makes people incredibly salty regarding this card.
This card is very, very interesting. Board wipes are good. We've always known that. This is not the best board wipe, but this is, in terms of like on the stack, one of the most effective board wipes once you get it down. It's not like the best card in a vacuum, but when you cast it, it has one of the most large impacts of a board wipe on a Commander game. So this sort of like ushered in, I think, an extra hatred of board wipes in general across the board from everyone, where they're just like, now I'm seeing more farewells, hi Amber, and now the games are going longer for various reasons, which we'll get to, and it's just like I hate, and then all the hate goes to farewell. I do think that there's a lot of parts about farewell that make it an extra feel bad or an extra powerful board wipe. It leaves you with very little. You are probably not going to have enough to just build a board state right away, but it doesn't affect the cards in your hand. So in terms of like, how have my experiences with farewell been? They've all been fine, honestly. And I'm sitting next to one of the people who plays farewell the most of anyone I know. I do think it is a good board wipe, but I think either I'm subconsciously building my decks to be able to recover from board wipes faster, or it's just because I play so much Commander and I enjoy it enough that, you know, I'm getting the next game in 45 minutes later. I can't even think of too many times where farewell came down and it extended the game by an hour. I know that is a thing that happens for sure, but I just don't think it's an experience I've had.
I can name times where I've looped farewell, and it's probably not that good. Trying to get to an Approach of the Second Sun win. I've done that a couple times. That's not that's not the most fun. But personally, I mean, I'm going to talk with my experience. I really like this card. I think that for a really long time, everyone was begging for a better board wipe. We have things like Dam Overloaded, and we have things like Wrath of God, and we're always looking for the bigger, most like powerful thing. And so they come out with a board wipe that does a little bit of everything, gets rid of everything, resets it to start, and suddenly people don't like it. And I think that it's a powerful card. It's not the best card in the format. You don't play this in every deck.
It's not a CEDH card.
It's not a CEDH card. 6 mana is a lot for a board wipe when you have board wipes that can reduce themselves, like Vanquish the Horde or Blasphemous Act and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, board wipes in general are just bad when you get to the high power games.
You don't want to be playing too many of them. However, I think that this is what people were asking for. I don't know if this is a hot take. This is what people were asking for. They're like, we want a better board wipe. And then they got it, and they couldn't handle it.
I don't think I'm in the camp to ban farewell. I really don't think I'm close, actually. I do understand that board wipes in general can extend games, but I think that's more about board wiping responsibly. If you can follow up a board wipe, that's going to be much less frowned upon. The one-sided board wipes are also ways to go. I don't think you want 5 board wipes in a deck. That's going to lead to, 5-hour-long games. And if one of them is farewell, it might sting a little bit harder. I think farewell is a card that doesn't belong at all power levels. If your decks are slower and they take longer to rebuild and you have a lot of just you wait till I untap cards, I think farewell is going to maybe lead to worse game experiences. I don't think we play too many games like that though. So this might not be in our wheelhouse to talk about too much because we play a lot of snappy, like if you give us a turn, we're going to rebuild no matter what. Like our hands are never empty because we love card draw, all that stuff. And we play a lot of removal. I just think I'm really not there yet. I think it's a strong card, but it is another card that might have to sort itself out. Maybe it has a little bit. Don't just throw this in every deck. Don't just board wipe because you can. Don't just board wipe to extend the game, but board wipes do extend the game sometimes. I don't know.
I don't think farewell should be banned. I think that you should board wipe responsibly. If you can rebuild faster than everyone else, then it's okay. However, don't loop farewell. Learn from me.
Don't be Mia.
Don't loop it. But
that's another thing to be said too about. I don't think it's that bad. I will not demonize somebody for casting a board wipe to not lose. That's what board wipes are for. And even if you don't have it's tricky. We can't talk about this forever. But even if you don't have a follow up, sometimes it's okay to cast a board wipe. Like I'm okay with you not wanting to lose the game. If the game starts to get into a certain time range, maybe that's just something you agree upon as a group. But I wouldn't blame the person trying not to die for casting a board wipe when that's what they're for.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think farewell is a very good board wipe, but I think that because of the high mana cost, because you can't play it in every deck, it's not an auto staple, not by a long shot, and because it is just kind of it's not a combo piece. It doesn't really propel you to winning. It's closer to like I'm going to set myself up in the best position. I don't think that we're in a place for it to be banned in Commander.
So we're 0 for 3 right now on bans, but let's keep the train moving and maybe we'll see if we can get one on the scoreboard. The next card is the One Ring. 4-mana artifact, indestructible. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on this thing. Tap it to put a burden counter on it, then draw a card for each burden counter on it. This card is colorless. This card is a powerhouse. This is one of the silliest Magic cards I've ever played with. I have accidentally demolished playgroups with this multiple times before, like when I was first testing out the card and realizing, oh, okay, this isn't even remotely a casual jank battlecruiser card. This card is obnoxious. It's so good. Generally, the play pattern is cast it, game text from everything, get a nice, clean, free rotation around the table. You won't really die too much. Then you draw a card right away. Then you take 1 damage, and then you draw 2 cards. So now you're up 3, plus a round of protection. Then next turn, you take 2 damage. You've now taken 3. And then you draw 3 cards, and it only gets sillier from there. It's harder to lose as you snowball advantage. Generally, I'm trying to actually count. I've played the One Ring, I think, more than you. I don't think there's many games where I have resolved the One Ring and also lost the game. That's not really something that happens.
It's really hard to lose the game. I don't put it in as many decks, mostly because I didn't want to buy more copies. But since I have bought more copies, I think I should be playing it in more decks. I think that this card is amazing. It goes in a lot of decks. It can go in any deck, technically. It's in 7% of all decks on EDH Rec right now. And it's incredibly powerful. It's like the clean fix of, oh, I need more card draw. How about I also get protection from everything? Plus, the fact that it is indestructible, plus you gain protection from things, so it's not like, target opponent sacks an artifact. That's going to have to wait till the next turn. You can't be targeted by that. It's incredibly tough to stop that snowball of advantage.
Right, and then there's also, the problem of once they drew 10 cards with it, are you going to leave it to stick around? Do you think they can't sacrifice it? Do you think they're going to get burdened? Because if they untap it and draw 6 more cards, you're screwed. But even if you kill it with your, very rare answer because it is indestructible, then it's like, well, they've already drawn, 8 cards off of it, or whatever I said before, 10 cards, and now you're going to fall behind from those. You're just losing tempo. You're bleeding yourself dry. I think my problems with this card are that it can go in any deck. It's pretty bad for diversity because what deck doesn't this go in terms of like power level? It pretty much goes everywhere. This sees play at the tippy top, peak CDH, and this sees play at your kitchen table with your upgraded precons, because why wouldn't you do it? There's really, the downside is laughable in terms of how much does it actually affect you in Commander. It really isn't. The life loss really doesn't add up. And I think that the other thing about the ring is that as the downside gets real, when you're up to 4 or 5 or 6, you're digging for answers to it. So that leaves you less likely to die to it because you're going to have life gain or a way to sacrifice it or a way to reset your life total or something. So for me personally, let's just get right to it. I think I would ban this card. I don't think this card is doing anything good for the format. I think that there could be some bad play patterns. I think it's about as strong as Dockside with the little extra nudge that it's colorless, so it can go literally anywhere. Can and maybe should in terms of power at least. I think it's also very hard to interact with. It comes down, you can't be attacked the same turn, so there's no risk of dying there. That's already a difficult, that's one avenue out the window. And then also it's got indestructible.
It's crazy to see that once you're getting to that 4, 5, or 6 life, like BZ said, you've already drawn 18 cards or 20 cards by that point. If you're at 6 life or 6 bird encounters on it, it's crazy to see, and it's incredibly hard to interact with. I feel like, if you're not making them sacrifice the highest CMC artifact or whatever, it's going to stay and they're going to win. I think that it's kind of like Dockside for me. It's pretty 50-50, but this one does nudge it over to the edge, and my gut says I would rather ban it than not ban it, but it would be 52-48.
Yeah, you know what? Fair point. I think the first 2 cards, so I think Nadu and Farewell, I think we're very firmly on the not ban. Dockside, we really are closer to 50-50. So it's not like a hard no on Dockside, but it's 50-50. And this feels like that, except what's nudging it for me to the yes is that it's colorless, hurts deck diversity, and can be just as frustrating to play against as Dockside.
It's obnoxious. It's so good. It's so good, it's obnoxious. And, I know we're not a CEDH channel, but I've played this turn 2 in CEDH, and it's been amazing. I've won, in the next couple turns because I've had so much card draw. So even getting this down on turn 4 at the pace that you're supposed to be playing it is still amazing if Commander games are usually going to turn 6 or 7.
Yeah, I think that the other thing about Dockside too, if we're going to compare these cards again, Dockside sometimes scales with the power of your deck in that, if you're all playing janky battlecruiser, Dockside Extortionist for 5 is not going to always win the game. But I think pretty much across the board, an unanswered One Ring is just going to dominate in a way that you just can't come back from. So that I think is another like edge to it. Because if they play Dockside, make 8 mana, spend 8 mana, it's like, okay, cool. But if One Ring draws 21 cards over 6 turns, you're just dead. Like there's nothing you can do about it. And I think the feeling that I got when I played the One Ring, a lot of the times when I wasn't sure about the power level, or I threw it in a deck just because I thought the card was good, but I didn't know how good, I did feel bad for playing it. Like it felt like I was dominating, like crushing, like it didn't even feel like a game.
The next card is a card that I also play. It was my first commander. It's Edgar Markov, 3 white, black, red for a 4/4, but with Eminence, which means this either triggers whether he's in the command zone or on the battlefield. Whenever you cast another vampire spell, if he's in the command zone or the battlefield, you create a 1/1 black vampire token, first strike and haste on him, and when he attacks, you put a 1/1 counter on each vampire you control.
I was surprised to see this in the cards that people most wanted banned.
I think it's because of Eminence in general. It kind of goes against the spirit of the format, and it's really hard to find answers to. I know there are a lot of games where I've played Edgar, and he just sits in the command zone the entire time. Because if you bring him out on the battlefield, he could get like oublieted or Kenny's transformation, and you can't get that effect. But if he stays in the command zone the entire time, you can always get that effect. He's never at risk of being hurt. And just at that point, people think it goes against the spirit of the format because you're not actually playing your commander. You're playing 99 cards plus something that sits around in the corner.
It's pretty funny the way you phrased that, because you were like, well, when I played Edgar, and that's the thing that makes people get upset about, is you didn't actually play Edgar.
I played the deck.
You played the deck, but you don't have to play the commander to get the effect of the commander, and it's really like 80% of the card, the first bit. Like, okay, a 6 mana 4/4 that like puts counters on, sure, if you're desperate, you can play that, but I think people get really upset that you never have to play this card. It feels like it feels, not to me, but to some people, it feels like an unfair advantage, because why does your thing just do stuff and I can never interact with it? Like there really is no way to interact with it in the command zone to just get those triggers. So like, why does that happen for you? And then my vampire deck or my, tree folk deck has to just, play spells and let them resolve. I do think Eminence was a pretty big whiff in terms of design. I don't think taking the fundamental rules of Commander and bending them in this particular way was a good move, because the joy and the interesting part of Commander and the tension is this deck's built around this one card. I'm going to get it in play every time, and then when it's in play, my deck does better. And it's weird. I don't think it's a great design. I don't think this card is like if I could go back in time, I would have this card not be released. But for me, that does not equate to I would ban this card right now. I don't think I'm even close to banning this card right now.
I think the sentiment for Edgar is like what people used to think for Aloro, right? The same thing. It's like you don't really have to play this. It can just sit around. But I think Edgar is kind of the poster boy of this entire thing because he has the most prevalent Eminence text box. Obviously, the Ur-Dragon is good, but no one's like, hey, I think we should really ban Jahida. What's the wizard?
Oh, Inala?
Yeah, sure. We're not banning Inala for anything because the Eminence text box is not that good on her.
Sidar Jabari.
Yeah, Sidar Jabari. I think that if we were to make Eminence kind of lower powered and make the big text box on the creature, that's really what we're getting at. I think that would make Eminence a little bit more fair, and I wouldn't be too mad about it, but and I'm not mad about this to begin with. I don't really want this banned, but if I had a time machine, I don't think I would tell them to make Eminence.
Right. I think that's a pretty fair, that's a pretty fair point. It's like, we're not advocating for this design. I hope they never make Eminence again. But would I ban this card? No, it's really just, it's something we're going to have to deal with. It's I don't even want to say it's a blemish on the format. It's just like a mistake they made. The rest of the cards are great. Like, there's so many awesome cards. Maybe 1 in 1,000 cards is a design mistake, so we'll take it. But I do want to also mention that I think there's just like this weird bias in the community against Edgar Markov. And we recently were on the command zone. We played an extra turns game, and the command zone picks our decks for that. They're like, hey, we're gonna match up our decks so they're all even power levels. And Mia played like a 1 mana creature, the cleric, whatever it's called, and Master of Dark Rites, that's what it is. And then like sacked creatures and started playing like a 5-drop on turn 2, and then played like a 2-drop and a 3-drop, and then she had a bunch of creatures, and they were getting big. And people were just like, yep, that's Edgar Markov, pub stomp, CDH, just throwing around all the buzzwords. And I'm just like, Mia didn't even, like, spoiler alert for the game, but Mia didn't even win that game. I think people just hate Edgar.
I think that Edgar is just a sore spot of Eminence in general, right? I think that because he hasn't had a reprint, it's a little bit rough to get a copy of him. And because of that, because Dragon, who is another very powerful Eminence commander, has gotten more reprints, it just makes people a little bit sore in general.
Absolutely, yeah. So I think not a ban for me.
It's definitely not a ban for me.
It's if you're looking for like scalability of how bannable I think these cards is, I think Edgar and Nadu are like at the very bottom, in the ditch. I would never ban them. Closer is like Farewell, but still not that close, and then pretty close is Dockside, and then over the line is the One Ring, just barely.
I think that about sums it up for me too. I think that just there are a lot of broken cards in Commander, and because of that, that's what makes the decks really fun to build and play against. But there are some that we just think that the format would be a little bit more fun without.
Moxfield.com, the best place online to build decks. If you want to see my Edgar Markov deck, which definitely shouldn't have been banned and is not CEDH, go online to Moxfield and you can check it out right there. It's the best place online to build decks. You can check out your average CMC, you can check out the color spread of your deck and how many lands you have, among other things. Go check it out right now. Check out our profile. Tell them we sent you.
Let us know what your stances are on these 5 cards. Just type like Nadu, ban, Dockside, no ban. Like, let us know. We want to see your lists in the comments. And also, if you want to check out a different video, we reset the ban list to 0 and tried to ban 10 cards only to make a stable format. And you can see how that went right here.